My girlfriend humiliated me in front of our friends for my low body count. I smiled and waited. Later that night, I held up my phone and asked, "Quick question. Does Mark count towards your current total, or is he for the next one?" Then I showed her their entire chat history. The discovery that ended my 2-year relationship with my girlfriend, Emily, wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a tearful confession. It was a quiet, digital accident. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting on the sofa, using our shared Blit to look up a recipe. Emily was out for a run. An iMessage notification popped up at the top of the screen. The name was Mark, accompanied by a string of heart emojis. The message read, "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." I stared at the message, my heart turning to a block of ice in my chest. Last night, Emily had told me she was having a girls' night at her friend's apartment across town. My first instinct was a hot, blinding flash of rage. But I've learned in my life that rage is a blunt instrument. It's messy and imprecise. What was needed here was the cold, sharp precision of a scalpel. I was in a seemingly happy, committed relationship. I trusted her completely. This wasn't a slow decay. It was an ambush. And an ambush requires a counter-ambush, not a chaotic firefight. I opened the messaging app. I didn't have to scroll far. There it was. A parallel life, a completely separate narrative running alongside mine for the last 6 months. Mark was a colleague from her office. Their conversations were a sickening mix of illicit plans, romantic declarations, and most painfully, a running commentary on me. I was the safe, boring boyfriend, the human golden retriever, the man she was with for stability while she figured out if Mark was the real thing. They had a whole language of contempt for me. She complained about my taste in music, my quiet nights in, my loyalty. To them, my stability wasn't a virtue, it was a joke. I sat there for 2 hours and read everything. I didn't just get angry, I got educated. I saw the full scope of her deception. And then I made a decision. I would not confront her. Not yet. A private confrontation would allow her to lie, to gaslight, to twist the narrative. She was a master of emotional manipulation. No, a betrayal this profound, this arrogant, required a public stage. It required an audience. So I became the perfect boyfriend, the human golden retriever. I was more attentive, more loving, more clueless than ever before. I was playing a role, and I was committed to giving an award-winning performance. For the next 2 weeks, I meticulously documented everything. I took screenshots of their entire chat history and saved them to a secure, hidden folder in the cloud. I was no longer her partner. I was the prosecuting attorney, building an airtight case. She mistook my renewed affection for weakness. She thought her little act of deception was working perfectly. She had no idea that her quiet, stable boyfriend was just patiently waiting for her to overplay her hand. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that she would. Her arrogance would be her downfall. I just had to wait for the right moment to give her the stage. Update 1. The stage presented itself last Saturday night. We were out for dinner with 2 other couples, our close friends, people who had been there for our entire relationship. The restaurant was loud, the wine was flowing, and the conversation was light and easy. The topic, as it often does in groups of 30-somethings, eventually turned to past relationships and dating horror stories. It was all fun and games until Emily, fueled by 2 glasses of expensive Chardonnay and a deep-seated need to be the most interesting person at the table, decided to turn the spotlight on me. "Oh, you guys think you have bad stories," she said with a dramatic, dismissive laugh. "You should try dating a man with the romantic history of a houseplant." The table went quiet. All eyes turned to me. I just smiled, a calm, neutral expression on my face. Her friend, Sarah, tried to defuse the situation. "Oh, come on, Emily," she said. "That's not fair. Jake is a great guy." "Oh, I know he's a great guy," Emily said, patting my hand in a gesture of pure condescending affection. "He's the best guy. He's loyal, he's sweet, he's simple. I'm his second real girlfriend ever. His body count is like 2. She said the number with a mixture of pity and amusement, as if it were a shockingly low score in a video game. The other guys at the table shifted uncomfortably. "I just think it's sweet," she continued, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "He doesn't have any of that messy baggage or experience. It's like dating a blank slate. It's adorable." The humiliation was a physical thing. It was a hot flush that spread across my face. She wasn't just sharing a private detail. She was using my loyalty, my commitment to our relationship, as a punchline. She was publicly emasculating me, framing my devotion as a sign of pathetic inexperience, all to make herself seem more worldly and desirable to her friends. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled my quiet golden retriever smile. I let her have her moment. I let her friends chuckle awkwardly. I let her believe she had won the social point. I just sat there, the perfect, clueless boyfriend, and I waited. The night was still young. We all decided to go back to our apartment for a nightcap. It was my suggestion. "Let's keep the party going," I said, with a cheerful enthusiasm that was entirely fake. Back at our place, the mood was relaxed again. The music was on, people were laughing. Emily was in her element, the queen of her social circle, holding court in the living room. She thought the uncomfortable moment at the restaurant was forgotten. She had no idea it was just the setup for the final scene. I waited until there was a lull in the conversation. Then, I stood up, a playful smile on my face. Okay, I said, getting everyone's attention. "So back to the topic from dinner. I've been thinking about it, and Emily, you're right. My romantic history is pretty straightforward, but it got me thinking about yours." She looked at me, a little confused, but still smiling. She loved talking about herself. "I just have a quick question for you," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "It's about your body count. I'm just trying to keep the numbers straight for my own records, you know?" I held up my phone. The screen lit up. "This guy, Mark," I said, my voice still light and conversational. "Quick question. Does he count towards your current total, or is he for the next one?" Then I turned my phone around so that everyone in the room could see the screen. It was displaying a crystal-clear screenshot of one of her texts to Mark from the week before. A text that read, "I can't wait to leave my boring boyfriend and start my real life with you." Update 2. The silence that fell over the living room was not just an absence of sound. It was a physical presence. It was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The six of us were frozen in a tableau of pure, unadulterated shock. Emily's face was a work of art. Her playful, arrogant smirk dissolved in an instant, replaced by a mask of ghostly white horror. Her eyes darted from the phone in my hand to the stunned faces of our friends and then back to me. She looked like a magician whose trick had just gone horribly, horribly wrong, revealing the hidden wires and trapdoors to the entire audience. Her friends were speechless. Their jaws were literally hanging open. They were staring at my phone, then at Emily, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and dawning disgust. I didn't let the moment pass. I kept my voice calm, almost casual, as if I were just continuing the conversation from dinner. "Because I'm a little confused about the timeline," I said, swiping to the next screenshot. It was a picture of them smiling at a winery she had told me she was visiting with her mother. This was from last month. Were we together then? Or was that during a break I wasn't aware of? I kept swiping. With each new screenshot, a fresh wave of horror washed over the room. I showed them their romantic dinner plans on nights she had told me she was working late. I showed them her texts to Mark, mocking my job, my friends, my very character. I showed them the entire sordid 6-month history of her secret life. It was a systematic, brutal, and undeniable presentation of the facts. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was just calmly narrating the story of her betrayal, using her own words as the script. When I was done, I put my phone back in my pocket. I looked at Emily. She was trembling, silent tears streaming down her face. "So," I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, final tone, "I guess my body count is still 2, but yours, Emily? It seems the numbers are a little more complicated than you let on." That's when the room finally erupted. Her friend, Sarah, the one who had tried to defend me at dinner, was the first to speak. "Emily, how could you?" she whispered, her voice full of a horrified pity. Emily didn't have an answer. She just sat there, broken. Our friends, started to get up. They mumbled apologies to me. They gave Emily looks of pure contempt. One by one, they filed out of the apartment, leaving the three of us, me, Emily, and the ghost of her lies, in a deafening silence. When the last friend had gone, I walked over to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. I dropped it on the floor in front of her. "The lease on this apartment is in my name," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "The life you have been living has been on my dime. Your time here is over. Pack your things. I want you out by morning. She finally found her voice. It was a pathetic, choked sob. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said. Maybe Mark has a spare room. Or maybe you can find another blank slate to write your lies on. But my story with you is over. Final update. It has been 6 months since the night I have come to call the presentation. The fallout from that evening was as swift and as total as I had planned. Emily left the next morning. She had to call her parents for a last-minute rescue, a humiliating experience for a woman who had built her entire identity on being a sophisticated, independent city girl. I was not there when she left. I had spent the night at a hotel. When I returned, the apartment was empty of her presence, save for a few forgotten trinkets and the lingering scent of betrayal. The first thing I did was change the locks. The second thing I did was a deep, thorough cleaning of the entire apartment. It was a symbolic act, a cleansing of the space, a reclaiming of my home. The social consequences for Emily were catastrophic. The story of her public exposure ripped through our social circle. She was not just a cheater, she was a hypocrite who had been caught in the most spectacular fashion. Her friends, the ones who had witnessed the reveal, were horrified. They had been her audience, her enablers, and they felt used. They all cut ties with her. She had built her social standing on a foundation of lies, and when that foundation crumbled, she was left with nothing. The affair with Mark, of course, imploded immediately. He was, by all accounts, humiliated and furious. He had been her co-conspirator, but he had also been a victim of her lies. She had told him I was just a clingy ex she couldn't get rid of. The revelation that I was her live-in, long-term boyfriend, the man funding the very life she was living, was a shock to him. He ended things with her via a single, scathing text message. With no boyfriend, no other boyfriend, no friends, and no home, Emily was forced to do the one thing she had always dreaded. She had to move back to her small hometown, back into her childhood bedroom, under the watchful eyes of her disappointed parents. The glamorous, exciting life she had been building was a ruin. As for me, my life has been a study in quiet, deliberate recovery. I took some time for myself. I focused on my work, on my health, on my real friendships. I learned a valuable lesson about trust and about the difference between a partner who values you and a partner who is simply using you as a stable backdrop for their own drama. I recently started dating again. Her name is Laura. She's a doctor. She's smart, she's kind, and she's honest. We are taking things slow. The other night I told her the whole story. She listened patiently, and when I was done, she just shook her head and said, "So she mocked you for being loyal, while she was actively being disloyal?" The irony is almost poetic. Emily tried to humiliate me for my low body count. She tried to use my loyalty and my commitment as a weapon against me. But in the end, those were the very things that made me strong. I was loyal to the idea of our relationship, right up until the moment I discovered it was a lie. And then, I became loyal to something more important: the truth. She thought my past was a joke, but it was her present that was a complete and utter fraud. And all I did was hold up a mirror and let her and everyone else see the truth.